Hi there, and welcome to the Realm of Horror's Horror Movie Awards for 2010. Now, I wasn't actually sure whether I was going to do this video or not, but I sort of got cajoled into it by some of the users on my website, so apologies if this seems a bit rushed, as this video was a bit last minute. Anyway, these are the horror films that I felt really stood out for one reason or another during the last year. Now obviously the list is going to be a bit arbitrary, as I haven't seen every single horror that was released in the UK last year, and the winners are generally based on the films that I found to be the most entertaining, so I'm sure some will disagree with my choices. Also, a lot of the categories I'm using, I just made them up as I went along basically, so if I do this again next year, then you might find a totally different set of awards that don't relate to this year's. But anyway, first up we have Best Sci-Fi Horror. Now that goes to the film Predators by Nimrod Antal and Robert Rodriguez. This was a somewhat belated third film in the Predators series, if you exclude those AVP movies, which sees a group of soldiers and mercenaries marooned on this alien world where they're then hunted down by the Predator creatures. The film boasted some good special effects and some nice gore in places and some good action scenes, as well as a good performance by the cast. Minor quibbles would be that it was perhaps a little too derivative of the original in places, to the point where some scenes appear to have been directly lifted from it, even going so far as to use the same musical cues. Also, perhaps Adrian Brody was a bit of a strange choice for the lead, as he's not exactly an A-list actor, but he carried the part well, and it was good to see Danny Trejo in this, along with Lawrence Fishburne, who has a minor role. In any case, the film was highly entertaining, and the movie's action scenes and special effects more than made up for any shortcomings. Next up, Best Foreign Language Film. Now that honour goes to the Spanish movie Rec 2. Now this one's been out in mainland Europe for quite some time, but it only came out in the UK last May. Now it's a sort of cross between Dawn of the Dead, Blair Witch, The Exorcist and Aliens, and picks up immediately after the first film. In this, a heavily armed SWAT team goes inside a building that's been quarantined by the authorities. Then once inside, the infected tenants show themselves and all hell predictably breaks loose. Like the first movie, it's all filmed from a first-person perspective, this time though through the policeman's helmet cameras. If you've not seen the first Rec, then you might be familiar with the film Quarantine, which was the US remake of it, but in any case, you can watch this without having seen the first. Now I actually managed to get to see this at the cinema and was thoroughly pleased that I did. In fact, I did make a video about this earlier this year, so you can go on my channel and check that one out if you're interested. But anyway, it's got some good action scenes, though for the most part it's about atmosphere and tension. If you like zombie films or stuff about demonic possession, then you should enjoy this. I don't believe it's been released in the US yet, so American horror fans will probably have to wait some time yet before they get to see this. Okay, next category, Best 3D Horror. Now there's only one film that could possibly win that title. It could have also easily have won the funniest horror film of the year, but for Best 3D Horror Picture of 2010, it undoubtedly has to be Piranha 3D. Oh yes, nothing even comes close. Now without doubt, this was the most fun I've ever had watching a horror film at the cinema. There's plenty of blood and gore, with lots of snotty teenagers getting devoured by ravenous piranha fish. There's a great cast, including Ving Rhames and Christopher Lloyd, who plays a similar character to the Doc in Back to the Future, and there's plenty of TNA on show, courtesy of English model Kelly Brook, along with some hilarious gags which I really can't go into on here without either spoiling the plot or getting this video flagged, but anyway. This one's just come out on UK DVD, which I'm hoping to do a review of shortly. If you get the new UK Blu-ray, it also has a 3D version on there, which can be played on one of those new 3D TVs, which gives you a proper 3D effect like in the cinema, whereas the DVD just uses the old red and blue specs. US horror fans will be disappointed to hear that they're only getting a 2D version on DVD, so unless they go for the special Blu-ray release and have a 3D TV, then they'll be missing out. Anyway, next up, Most Disappointing Horror Film. That dubious honour unfortunately goes to George Romero's Survival of the Dead. Now if ever more proof were needed that George Romero has clearly lost the plot, then this film is surely it. Now this one went straight to DVD here in the UK and pretty much everywhere else in the world too. In fact, the UK disc was actually the first release this film had anywhere in the world, which pretty much sums this one up. Basically, you got these National Guardsmen, who featured briefly in the last film, heading on over to this island to look for refuge from the ensuing zombie menace, only to become embroiled in a blood feud between two groups of warring Irish farmers. Now the problem was that the plot centred around these feuding farmers, whilst the zombie outbreak, which should have been the main focus of the film, was treated like a minor backstory. Horror fans like myself go to see zombie films because they want to see people battling zombies, not drunken Irishmen getting into fights. If you live in the UK, like me, we've had that sort of thing going on in the news for about the last 40 years or so here, so we're certainly not interested in seeing zombie films about it. The only good thing I can say about this was it perhaps wasn't half as bad as Diary of the Dead. But considering how highly Romero's earlier films, such as Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, are regarded, I'm sure this and his other films of late will come as a major disappointment, and I'm sure others will echo my call for him to stop making films now before they get any worse. This release was also a disappointment in that the UK DVD did not contain anything in the way of extras. I mean, if the distributors can't even be bothered to include so much as a few trailers on there or something just to sweeten the deal, then why the hell should we be bothered to part with our hard-earned cash? Anyway, that brings us swiftly along to our next category: Worst Horror Film of the Year. Now, there was only one film in my mind that could possibly go under that title, and that goes to Saw 3D. Now, I must admit, I did like some of the earlier films, but the series has been in a steady decline for a while now, with the movies getting progressively worse each time. But this latest offering, which is actually the 7th in the series, believe it or not, is proof that the barrel has well and truly been finally scraped. It's the same tired old plot, with people having to perform various grotesque tasks either to win their freedom or save someone, which ultimately fails, so the whole exercise becomes completely pointless. Then you've got that rogue cop who's behind it all, who's turned into a cross between James Bond and the Terminator, owing to the fact that he always seems to stay one step ahead of the police no matter what, and can get himself in or out of any situation undetected, as well as being able to take out several heavily armed police officers by hand, which just stretched the film's feasibility to beyond breaking point. As for the 3D, it was a total waste of time. With the exception of the opening scene, it was hardly utilised at all, and was obviously just a gimmick to try and boost the falling ticket sales. In all honesty, if they just made the film in 2D, you wouldn't have missed anything. So let's just hope that's the end of the franchise and we're not subjected to any more of these. Okay, moving up a notch. The most hardly noticed release. Now, that would have to go to the film Machete by Robert Rodriguez. I mean, did this film actually play cinemas anywhere in the UK? I mean, it had a release date planned for the end of November. I saw posters up for it at my nearby showcase, but when I went to check the cinema listing shortly afterwards, it was nowhere to be seen. My local cinema didn't show it either, nor was it on at the Odeon multiplex in the neighbouring city, so I really don't know what happened there. I did eventually manage to see a screener copy and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it would have been nice to have been able to see this on the big screen. For those unfamiliar, it's not really a horror film as such. It's a sort of homage to those old exploitation films of the 1970s, and stars Danny Trejo as a gun for hire that's being hunted down by the police, a group of hitmen and a drug lord. It's action-packed, tongue-in-cheek, and overall it's pretty damn fun, and also had a very good cast, including Robert De Niro, Steven Seagal and Tom Savini amongst others. If you've seen Robert Rodriguez's other films, like From Dusk Till Dawn and Desperado, then you'll know what to expect. Anyway, definitely want to pick up on DVD when it comes out in 2011. Now, my last category, which is the one you've been waiting for, the best horror film of 2010. Now, this was a bit of a tricky one, because as I looked over the releases we've had over the last year, the majority of the more notable titles were either remakes or sequels, so my decision for the best horror film might be a bit controversial. However, after some deliberation, I eventually decided on The Crazies. Now, it was actually a very close call as to whether to go for this one or Piranha 3D. However, I eventually decided to go for The Crazies, as whilst Piranha was the most fun, The Crazies was arguably the better film. Now, it's kind of ironic, given that I slated George Romero's latest horror film earlier on, that my choice for Film of the Year should be a remake of one of his earlier titles, but yeah, this was a very dark and disturbing sort of film about a small town sheriff and his colleagues trying to get out of a town that's been quarantined by the authorities after locals start to go berserk and attack each other. Competently directed by Breck Eisner, there were some nice moments of tension, some good action scenes, and of course plenty of gore, and was certainly one of the better films to have been released this year. Now, I will admit it would have been nice to have picked something a bit more original for the title of Best Horror Film of 2010, but unfortunately Hollywood seems more interested in rehashing old ideas than coming up with new ones at the moment. But that in no way detracts from how much I enjoyed this film, and I would highly recommend it to you. Anyway, that's it for this video. Please be sure to rate, comment and subscribe. Feel free to let us know what your choices for the best and worst film would have been. And also, please be sure to check out my horror movie website, links to which are below. I've got more videos coming up in the new year, so until then,